I want to welcome to the program a good friend of ours, works for an incredible organization, Brent Gardner. He's the Chief Government Affairs Officer at Americans for Prosperity, also a Senior Advisor at Americans for Prosperity Action. Brent, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Well, I'm good, but I imagine we're a lot like you are and that we're, it's like getting a little tired. We're here at the end. We're just trying to do everything we can. I know that's what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy, crazy year. I mean, depending on when you start counting, crazier for longer than that. But pretty exciting times. There's been a lot of really great work done in this election cycle for sure.
No kidding. Well, you guys are amongst the most prolific grassroots armies that there are out there. Obviously, this is all tied to what you see is policy action that is necessary for not only this country to survive the Biden years, but actually grow and thrive and become what we want it to be here in the future. Just give us a little overview of what all you've been up to.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Just this week, we went over 15 million voter contacts.
Wow.
1 million doors knocked alone in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
We've seen the kind of energy that comes about as a result only of the kind of fear that lives out there based on the impacts of those Biden-Harris policies. And I think we've got a lot of things going for us this time. We've got excellent candidates. AFP has supported 7 U.S. Senate races and 44 House races.
Wow.
More than 650 total races across the country. So needless to say, that kind of energy to do that kind of work only comes when people feel connected to the need to step out and really try and make a difference.
Yeah, well, you've certainly communicated that to a whole bunch of people who want to be a part of what it is that you guys are up to. And it sort of starts with how do you prevent the worst case scenario, right? I mean, a Dem trifecta is everybody's worst nightmare. And what that would mean, obviously, Democrats control, if they controlled the House, Senate, and a presidency, we saw briefly after the 2020 election what it is that they would do. And like for AFP, that's about as opposite of an agenda as you guys can imagine.
Yeah, and the ideas have even gotten worse since then. They seem to get worse every year, but taxes on unrealized gains, packing the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think the threat is a lot closer than most people realize. So that's why having the firewall strategy was such an important thing, to ensure that we had at least one chamber of commerce one chamber of Congress to have divided government, ultimately focused on trying to get both and give ourselves an opportunity to pursue great legislation along with having the certainty of the ability to stop some of the worst ideas.
Yeah, and I know that your team is made up of people who actually live in these communities. You're not just airdropping staffers from Washington, D.C. These are locals who have personal relationships with those in their neighborhoods, hitting the doors, and they have a connection. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. When your folks go up to a door, what are they hearing? Are there any stories that stand out?
Yeah, I mean, listen, to your point, the only credit in politics these days is authenticity. And so being an authentic member of a community makes a difference. People listen to their neighbors. They tend to tune out the news. Sometimes they even tune out elected officials. But the folks that they know, the folks that they see every day in the grocery store, at breakfast at a local diner, the folks that they purchase their local goods from, these are the people who they listen to. And the engagement of those communities is the most effective way to be able to engage in politics. And listen, across this country, we hear stories every day, standing in driveways and on doorsteps, the challenges that they're facing, the challenges that come from the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, whether it's the cost of gas or groceries, the problems with the southern border. These issues are what's driving people to the polls today. And at AFP, we like helping to show those folks who the type of not just members of Congress or senators, but who are the statesmen that can actually ultimately go out there and do what's necessary to fix these problems. And so they're really connected to the challenges they face at their dinner table. And that's driving a lot of them in the activity that we're seeing this year. And hopefully we'll see them all come out to vote either early, before Election Day, or on Election Day.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Look, Brent, you've seen this, and as have we. We've all been through good elections and we've been through bad elections, and there are some of those elections that sort of hang in the balance where you're like, well, I hope it goes okay, but then like you maybe feel like you missed something. Seems to us like there's a lot of enthusiasm out there, and that this is not necessarily a measurable quantity when it comes to static polling in October. Wonder what you guys are feeling as your people are disbanded here throughout the entire country.
Yeah. I mean, this is a run through the tape election.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to who never stops all the way through election day and who's focused on ensuring not just that you get people to say they're going to vote, but make sure they actually get out, drive that turnout, which is why our message for a long time now has been, are you going to vote? What's your plan to vote?
Yeah.
Do you know about the opportunities to be able to vote early? Do you need to vote absentee? Do you have a plan for election day? And then don't just vote, in one part of the ticket, vote all the way down the ticket, because it's so critically important for us to be able to solve these challenges that we have partnerships in the different parts of government where there's folks that are focused on putting America back on the right track.
You mentioned Pennsylvania. You've already hit 1 million doors in that state, and I know that you've got 7 Senate races and you've got dozens of House races. I wonder if you could talk about a couple of the other states where your activity is off the charts, like it is in Pennsylvania, or some other places you're focused.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Montana is not a state that's highly populated. We've done more than 650,000 doors.
Takes some work to get to a door in Montana.
It does take some work to get to a door. 850,000 doors in Ohio. I mean, quite frankly, whether you're talking about Michigan or Wisconsin or the states that we've already talked about, we want to get to all those places. It's not enough for folks to be able to turn out just a base. So we've targeted not just base voters to get out, but swing voters. We've targeted low propensity voters. We've really done what we need to do to make sure that we get the majority that we need to come out and help deliver a Congress that can ultimately support the right policy objectives. So whether it's AFP staff and volunteers going out and doing that work, or whether it's encouraging those folks to talk to their friends and neighbors, the true nature of Grassroots is going to help drive either success or failure on this election.
No, I mean, look, no question about it. The one thing that I've noticed from the outside sort of looking in, you can always count on organizations like AFP in a critical election to be out there, pounding the pavement, getting to people at their doors, making sure people vote. But there's also been another bunch of groups, whether they're Trump-related groups or whatever, and it seems like everybody's sort of working together a little bit better this time around. I wonder if you're seeing that in your group, and because, look, you guys are kind of a cornerstone and always have been of the grassroots movement on the conservative side, but it seems like there's just more participation this time around.
Yeah, I think in some ways we're definitely seeing that. I mean, at the end of the day, the resource for election is people. And I think when you see people with the level of interest and the focus on the issues at hand and the real need for it. I mean, look, we've talked about a lot of the issues that are driving this election for a really long time. But the fact is people are feeling the impacts of these things in a very real way. It's not theoretical. It's not a concept. It's not a policy idea. These are things that are impacting Americans every day, whether it's at their home with their families or in their businesses or their bottom line. So, I think people who are members of many groups are looking at this as the right opportunity to go all in. And it's definitely something that we've seen to get the kind of numbers we just talked about at AFP is that, people are looking to be engaged. They're looking to not listen to a think tank, but participate with a do tank.
Yeah. And well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think one of the things that makes your group so unique, the thing I love about AFP is that you don't just complain about the problems that are in front of you. You actually have solutions and you've got ideas. And so let's say that Republicans are successful on Election Day, crossing our fingers over here at the Variety program. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the solutions you guys are out there discussing with folks at the doors.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple of days after this election, the iPads go down and the opportunity to start working on the legislative environment really kicks up. And whether it's in state houses across the country focused on education reform, or whether it's at the federal level with the pending fiscal cliff, the challenges that we still face at the southern border, whether it's questions about dealing with healthcare reform, regardless, there's a host of issues where we know we have to take action. If we don't take action on the TCJA, expirations next year, it's a massive tax increase for Americans who are already struggling. And so any one of those issues or countless more, those are places where we begin the activation right away. And let's not forget, we've got a lame duck session coming up after this election cycle. So AFP will be active and working on all that stuff and looking to find ways that we can really get back to what we know we need to do.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned some of the issues that you guys are hearing out there. It does dovetail very well with what you guys are working on and what it is that people are concerned about. Clearly, pocketbook stuff is driving the way for a whole bunch of voters here. The border like never before has been an issue this election. Is that kind of what you're hearing and seeing in all these communities?
Yes. I mean, the truth is, with the challenge that we face at the southern border, every state is a border state today. When you look at the challenge that we see on the cost of gas and groceries since the Biden administration took office, these are real impacts. They're significant cuts to the family budget. The opportunity for folks to be able to experience a prosperous American life are impacted by these decisions. And that's what we're hearing people talk about. I think it's what we're going to find out they're voting on.
Well, a lot of people live in states that are not a part of the conversation. I know you guys are still knocking doors in those states as well. And of course, everybody's focused on these 7 battleground states for the presidential, but there are these down ticket, we talked about this already, but there are these down ticket needs that Republicans have if we want to succeed into 2025. And I wonder if you could talk about what you're doing in these non-battleground states.
Yeah, I mentioned there's 51 federal races that we're in. That's a long way between that and 650. State legislators across this country, host a variety of legislative opportunities that we engage in. And we've got great champions, phenomenal legislators, where we're doing the same kind of campaign activities that we're doing at the federal level, at the state level. And it's so critically important. It's important because a lot of those issues are not local issues in the way that most people think about it, your town or your county. They impact entire states, their ability to drive widespread economic growth or the kind of economic constrictions that are occurring. So, from our perspective, we're a collective of business owners, of local activists, of college students, of high schoolers. And these folks are engaged in issues that have every bit as much an impact on their communities as some of the federal issues that we've already talked about. And so keeping them engaged, giving them an opportunity and a platform to go out there and try and offer real policy solutions, that's a big part of what AFP does.
Yeah, in the end, politics and elections, it's all the ultimate relationship business. Yeah. And AFP is well ahead of anybody else in terms of putting in the time and building the infrastructure over a long period of time to have those local relationships that matter, and both persuading people to go out to vote, but ultimately the next generation of leaders, right? I mean, I think that's what you guys are doing in investing in people in local communities. I got to imagine that there are people who started walking doors for AFP at one point who are now state legislators who could be the next senators and maybe president of the United States.
Yeah, there's members of Congress. Our folks, they start with a passion. They come to us looking for a way to express that passion in a meaningful way. We've certainly seen a lot of those new folks throughout this election cycle, and there's a lot of them who are really excited about where they take it. Not only are they going to have an impact to their community through engaging in this election work, but they've got an active policy agenda in every state we're engaged in, and they're going to follow that through. And at the end of the day, if ultimately they see an opportunity to go out and contribute in a bigger way, I will not be surprised at all if we see many of them continue that rise into elected office.
Well, you've got thousands of people spread out all around the country, but I'm wondering if people listening to this show right now want to get off the couch and want to get engaged this coming weekend, and they're trying to figure out how to do it, what do you suggest? Where do they go?
Go to afpaction.com. Reach out, find an opportunity to go out and join your friends and neighbors. Knock on doors, have those great conversations, get to meet people in your community who are as passionate about trying to solve the problems we all face together. And, make sure that no matter what, you go out and vote. You vote early, you vote on election day, you fill every seat in your car, you vote all the way down the ballot. At the end of the day, the time to make a difference is right now. And there's still time to really make a difference in this election.
These love it.
Close margin races, guys. So every vote.
No kidding. Well, let's bottom line this for us, Brent. I mean, you're as close to the ground as anybody out there. You feel good? We're going to win this thing?
I've tried to come up with different ways in conversations like this to say cautiously optimistic. So I'll say this. It makes sense to not be too positive, to make sure that you put your energy today into trying to find a way to make sure that the ultimate outcome is, because we didn't take any time as we headed towards the end zone to slow walk or dance. We've got to make sure we make the most of every minute between now and when the polls close.
What an excellent message. Brent Gardner, thank you so much for everything you do. Thanks for being a part of the program. And thanks for joining us today. I think with your help, we can get in the right direction on Tuesday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.